He discouraged his wife from mentioning their son again and had grandly ordered that the household must run on as if he had not been born. When he spoke in that tone, his wife fully understood that he meant it. His affluence, his bank balance, buoyed him up and made him bear the loss of their son.
He lived in a sort of radiance which made it possible for him to put up with anything. When he sat at his desk from early in the day till sunset, he had to talk, counsel, read aloud, and collect money, in fact go through all the adventures of money-making. At the end of the day, as he walked back home, his mind was full of the final results, and so there was practically no time for him to brood over Baloo.
Late at night, when the voices of the city had died down and when the expected sleep came a little late, he speculated on Baloo. Perhaps he had drowned himself. There was no news of him, although several days and weeks had passed.
His wife accused him at first of being very callous and not doing anything about it. He did not know what was expected of him. He could not go and tell the police.
He could not announce a reward for anyone who traced him. He could not. He hated to make a scene about it, and solved the whole thing by confiding in Dr. Pal. Dr. Pal had promised to keep an eye on the matter and tell him if anything turned up.
No one could do more than that. Margaya had generally given out that his son had gone on a holiday to Bombay or Madras, and lightly added, "Young boys of his age must certainly go out by themselves and see a bit of the world. I think that's the best education." "But boys must have a minimum of SSLC, someone remarked.
Margaya dismissed it as a foolish notion. What is there in matriculation? People can learn nothing in schools.
"I have no faith in our education. Who wants all this nonsense about a squared plus b squared? If a boy does not learn these, so much the better."
To be frank, I have got on without learning the a squared and b squared business, and what is wrong with me? Boys must learn things in the rough school of life. Whatever he said sounded authoritative and mature nowadays, and people listened to him with respectful attention.
These perorations he delivered as he sat in his office. His office consisted of a medium-sized room with 4 mattresses spread out on the floor. At the other end of it there was a sloping desk where an accountant sat.
He was a lean old man, with a 15-day-old silver beard encircling his face at any given time. He was a pensioner, a retired revenue clerk, who wore a close coat and a turban when he came to the office. He was expected to arrive before Margaya.
It pleased Margaya very much to see him at his seat, bent over his ledgers. He was instructed not to look up and salute when Margaya came in, since it was likely to disturb his calculations and waste his time. Margaya said, "I do not want all this formality of a greeting.
I see you every day. If you want to please me, do your work, and get on with it without wasting your time." But when he felt he needed an audience for his perorations, he addressed him, and any other clerks who might be there.
Margaya sat in one corner of the hall. He had a desk before him made of smooth polished wood which he had bought from the blanket merchant at a second-hand price. Margaya loved to gaze on its smooth, rippled grains, remnants of gorgeous designs that it had acquired as a tree trunk, hieroglyphics containing the history of the tree.
Whenever he gazed on it, he felt as if he were looking at a sea and a sky in some dream world. But what is the use of gazing on these and daydreaming? He told himself, sharply pulling his mind back.
He lifted the lid and gazed inside, and there was the reality which he could touch and calculate and increase: a well-bound half-leather ledger, a bottle of red ink, a bottle of black ink, an oblong piece of blotting paper, and a pen, the red holder of which his fingers had gripped for years now. And beside it was a small bag made of thick drill, into which went all the cash he collected.
His clerk did not know what he collected each day. He did not look into the account book which Margaya kept, nor did he count the cash. It was all done by Margaya himself.
He did not believe that it was necessary for anyone to share his knowledge of his finances. It was nobody's business but his own. The work that he gave the accountant was copying down the mortgages that were left with him by the villagers who came round for financial assistance. He not only kept the deeds, but put the old man to the task of copying them down entirely in a big ledger.
He alone could say why he wanted this done, but he would not open his mouth about it to anyone. The old man was being paid 50 rupees a month, and he was afraid of being thrown out if he questioned too much. He just did his duty.
At about 2 o'clock Margaya locked his safe box and got up saying, "I'm going out for tiffin, will be back in a minute." Look after the office, and keep anyone who may come here till I return. Margaya was always used to having a semicircle of persons sitting before him as in the old days and never interrupted his studies or calculations to look at them or receive their greetings.
He was a very busy man whose hours were valuable. As the day progressed, it was a race with time, for he had to close his books before sunset. The owner of the house, the blanket dealer, did not like to waste money on installing electric lights. He went on dodging his tenants' appeals day after day.
His excuse was that materials were not available in quantities he needed or at prices he was prepared to pay. He went on saying that he had sent a direct order to the General Electric in America, that he had business associates of his blanket contract days who would supply his wants direct, and that he was looking for a reply with every sailing, and thus he kept his tenants in hope.
The plain fact seemed to be that he did not like to waste money. He confided to his friends, "Why should anyone keep his shop or office open after 6 o'clock? Let him work and earn during the day, that is quite enough."
I hear that they are going to introduce a law limiting working hours, when it will be a grave penalty to keep shops or offices open after sunset. The result was that the shops remained without light, and since Margaya did not believe in spending his own money on an oil lamp, he had to rush through his day's work and close the accounts before darkness fell. He worked without wasting a minute.
One or two of his clients, who had waited long enough to catch his attention, cleared their throats and made other small sounds. Margaya suddenly looked up from his desk and told one of them, "Go there," pointing at his accountant, sitting at the other end of the hall. "He will give you the deed back." The other showed no sign of moving, at which he said sharply, "You heard me?
If I have got to speak each sentence twice, I shall have to live for 200 years and be satisfied with a quarter of my present earnings." "Why do you say such harsh things, master?" the other asked.
"Is it because I am asking for my deed back? Is it wrong?" "It is not wrong."
"Why should anyone refuse to give a title deed that is yours by right?" He said it in such a tone that the other hesitated and said, "You have been as a father to me in my difficulties and you have helped me as much as you could. And yet you have not the grace to trust me with your title."
"Do you think I am going to make a broth of it and drink it off?" The client rose and said, "I will come again for it tomorrow, sir, just to show that I am in no hurry." He rose and walked out.
Margaya said to the others, "You see that fellow? The ingratitude of some of these folk sometimes makes me want to throw up everything," and the others made sympathetic sounds just to please him. His accountant added from his corner his own comment in his hollow, hungry voice.
"He is afraid he may have further interest to pay if he leaves his papers here. I know these people, they are docile and lamb-like as long as they hold our money, but the moment they return the principal and interest." Margaya did not like this. "Don't disturb yourself, Shastri, go on with your work." He hated the hungry, tired tone of his accountant.
"I was only giving you a piece of observation. It is getting to be a nuisance, some of these fellows demanding their papers back at short notice," Shastri persisted. At this Margaya realized that it would not be feasible to put his accountant down so easily, and cut him short with, True. We must include a condition that they must give us at least 3 days for returning their papers." A visitor who felt that he had waited too long asked, "Margaya, don't you recognize me?"
"No," replied Margaya promptly. "I am Kand," he said. "Which?"
"Of Somanur." "No, you are not," replied Margaya promptly. The other laughed, leaned forward almost over the desk, and asked, "Do you still say that I am not Kand, master?"
Margaya scrutinized him closely and cried, "You, old thief, it is you, yes. What has come over you? You look like a man 100 years old. Why those wrinkles round your nose?
Why those folds at the chin and that silver filing all over your face? What is the matter with you and where are your teeth gone?" The other just raised his arms heavenward, lifted up his eyes as much as to say, "Go and put that question to the heavens if you like."
Now Margaya wanted to clear his hall of all his visitors. He felt that here was the man he would like to talk to the whole day. He looked at the others, gave a paper back to someone, and said, "I cannot advance you on this."
"Sir, please," he began. "Come tomorrow, we will see. Now leave me, I have many important things to talk over with old Kand."
He had lost sight of Kand years ago. Margaya had been very fond of this man, who always said that he preferred fluid cash to stagnant land and that it was more profitable to grow money out of land than corn. Kand had now come to ask Margaya's advice on how best to get money out of some new lands which had unexpectedly come to him through the death of a relative.
These lands were in the regions of Mempi, whose slopes were covered with teak and other forests, and at whose feet stretched acres and acres of maize fields, with stalks standing over a man's height. Margaya was carried away by visions of this paradise of blue mountains, forest, and green fields. It was wealth at the very source and not second-hand after it had travelled up to town.
The more he listened to Kand's petition, the more he felt that here was raw wealth inviting him to take a hand and help himself. Though it had grown nearly dark, he sat and listened to Kand as he narrated to him his financial ups and downs. "I am glad you have come back to me, Kand.
I will pull you out of your difficulties," he said as he rose to go. Kand explained, "I cannot get any more loans from the cooperative bank, they have expelled me for default, although they auctioned the pledges." "The crooks," Margaya muttered.
"They are crooks, I tell you. I do not know why the government tolerates this institution. They should put in jail all the secretaries of cooperative societies."
The picture of the secretary and Arul came back to him with all the old force. Margaya warned him, "Don't go near them again, they will see you ruined before they have done with you." "I will look after you," he added protectively, starting to lock up his door.
He had sent away his accountant, and with a duplicate key he locked the door of his office. He generously indicated to Kand the veranda. "Sleep here, Kand. No one will object."
"I will see you tomorrow morning. And then we will go and inspect your property at Mempi. What time is your bus?"
"The first bus leaves the market square at 6 o'clock. The next? It is at 8:30. 4 buses pass Mempi village every day," he said with a touch of pride.
"So that you may come oftener into town and borrow, I suppose. There is also a railway station, about 5 or 6 stones off," Kand said. "From here you can get the evening train and be down there at about 12 o'clock.
"And get eaten by tigers, I suppose," Margaya added, before reaching home. Kand laughed at this piece of ignorance. "Tigers are in the hills and generally do not come down."
"Even then I prefer to come with you by the morning bus," Margaya said. "We will go by the second bus tomorrow. You can have your food in that hotel there."
Margaya walked home. At his house he found a commotion. His wife's voice could be heard wailing, and a large crowd had gathered at his front door.
He quickened his pace on seeing it. "What is the matter?" he asked someone nearby.
He hoped the people were not rushing in order to loot the house. He had kept a few important documents in the front room and a lot of cash. Must remove it elsewhere, he thought as he pushed his way through the crowd on the front steps.
"Get out of the way," he thundered. "What are you all doing here?" Someone in the crowd said, "Your lady is weeping."
"I see that. Why?" They hesitated to speak.
He gripped one nearby by his shirt collar and demanded, "What has happened? Can't you speak?" He shook him vigorously till he protested, "Why do you trouble me, Margaya?"
"I won't speak." Margaya let him go and went in. He saw his wife rolling on the floor and wailing, in a voice he had never heard before.
He never knew that she had such a high-pitched voice. There were a number of women sitting round her and holding her. Margaya rushed towards them crying, "What has happened to her?"
"Meenakshi, what is the matter with you?" She sat up on hearing his voice. Her hair was untied.
Her eyes were swollen. She wailed, "Balu! Balu!" Her voice trailed off and she broke down again. She fell on the floor and rolled in anguish.
Margaya felt helpless. He saw his brother and his wife also in the crowd. He knew something must be seriously the matter if these two were there, and their many children sucking their thumbs.
His brother's wife was sitting beside Margaya's wife and trying to comfort her. Margaya rushed up and pleaded, "Won't someone tell me what has happened?" His brother pushed his way through the crowd and handed him a card.
Margaya's eyes were blurred with the mist of perspiration. His excitement had sent his heart racing. He rubbed his eyes and gazed on the card.
He couldn't read it. He groaned and fumbled for his glasses. He could not pull them out of his pocket easily. He gave the card to the one nearest him and cried, "Can't someone read it?"
"Is it an illiterate gathering? What are you all watching for?" And then some person obliged him by reading out, "Your son, B. Balu, is no more."
What? What? Ellipsis. Who says so?
Margaya cried, losing all control over himself. More perspiration streamed down his eyelids and he wept aloud, "My son. Ellipsis. My son. Am I dreaming?"
The assembly watched him in grim silence.